Fatality.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
Worlds collided at the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago. Young and old. War and peace. Law and order.
You can't take that week in isolation. 68, one of the most dramatic and traumatic years in the nation's history.
Let's on to Chicago and let's win there. Thank you.
They kind of all rolled to Chicago, and you could feel it coming.
Bill Daley, who would become President Obama's chief of staff, was a college student and spent the convention at the side of his father, Chicago Mayor Richard J. Daley.
We knew that there was going to be an enormous challenge on the streets, and my father believed that he was the defender of the city.
No more war! The peace groups are demanding permission to march on Convention Hall the night the Democrats nominate their candidate for president.
With thousands of protesters expected, 12,000 Chicago police officers were deployed along with the National Guard.
A Democratic convention is about to begin in a police state. There just doesn't seem to be any other way to say it.
Jesus. I just know we're heading in that direction, okay? I just know that. And what's really amazing is that LBJ was probably one of the most successful presidents by the standard of an ordinary American, by the standard of somebody that was trying to, get preschool for their kids, or a Head Start program, or Medicare for their senior citizen parent, or desegregation, or the right to vote enshrined in law. I mean, the amount of stuff that got done, and the amount of stuff that Biden has gotten done. And you know what they have in common, do you? Yeah, they're both senators. They were both masters of the Senate, okay? Biden was a senator for 37 years, and people want to just trash that experience, just trash it. And yet, here we are with Ukraine, a package of aid for Ukraine, a package of aid to Israel, even with the, uber progressives. By the way, Summer Lee, yesterday was a primary in Pennsylvania, and Summer Lee was being challenged by a moderate Democrat, and she's like a squad member. She's a very progressive member, and she won. She won last night. So, people are doing just fine, expressing themselves without any violence, expressing themselves, when they're for something or not for something through the ballot box, okay, which would have been a great thing for America if we had 2 terms of LBJ, who would have died in office, right? Well, let's say 68. He would have been inaugurated in 69, 70, 71. Yep, he would have died in office. He would have. But honestly, it's an amazing thing. I'm looking at this list that Biden has. Okay, some of them, a good chunk of them. And so today we're adding, you have a Bill of Rights, essentially, for refunds if the airline stiffs you or screws you or cancels your flight or doesn't put your family together when you actually booked your family together, or your bags don't show up, or your connection is, you're late and you miss your connection, and so you have to take a rental car or something. All of those expenses are now due back to you if the airline was late, or if the airline canceled your flight, or if your bags didn't show up because the airlines failed to get that bag there. It's just stuff like that. Overtime for people who make a lot of money and a little money. The end of these non-competes, which was such a terrible, terrible thing for anybody who's ever been affected by one. You know what I'm talking about. God, it's horrible that somebody could tell you you're not allowed to work. Can you imagine?
Yeah, I actually can. I do trivia a few nights a week. I host a trivia show, and I had to sign one of those non-competes, and I didn't take it too seriously till COVID hit, and I started hosting over Zoom some trivia shows for regulars. I gave them my number, we hooked up, and they'd join up on Zoom, and I'd ask questions, we'd do the whole thing. A couple weeks in, they threw my non-compete in my face. I couldn't even over Zoom host a trivia game. It was competing.
Yeah, it's exactly that. It is truly that. And so, you know what's really interesting? It's the pull yourself up from your bootstraps people that actually advocate for you to have to sit out and not be able to work for their corporate clients, for the benefit of the haves, so that the have-nots or the wanna-haves who are willing to work for it can't even work for it. It's such a disgusting thing. But you know he did the Inflation Reduction Act. You know he did the infrastructure bill, okay? Oh, check this out. So you know the infrastructure bill has a lot of union protections built into it because Biden is Biden. And he is a union person through and through. And he believes in collective bargaining. He thinks when you show up with a giant corporation, you don't have to go in all by yourself and sit there with some middle manager who's so afraid that you're going to find out that he doesn't know what he's doing and negotiate for your salary with him. He thinks that there's power in numbers. He thinks that if you have a group of laborers that amount to 3 million people in that same industry, maybe they ought to collectively bargain for a contract that would affect all the members. Do you know what I'm saying? So today, the the North American Building Trades Union, which used to be Donald Trump's neck of the woods because he was a builder. But they got so tired of him promising infrastructure week. It's in the article on the homework today. They said the North American Building Trade said it's almost like the perfect leader was sent at the perfect time for working people. That's the NABTU president, Sean McGarvey. He said this about Biden. He said, we're endorsing him. We are absolutely endorsing him. And the reason he gave is because Biden got the infrastructure package passed. And Biden, promised that he would do it, but Trump did too. And he said, that Trump, here's the quote about Trump from the same guy, McGarvey. Quote, "He was one of the worst clients we ever had because he rarely kept his word, and it was a fight to get him to pay us back," McGarvey said. And that the financial relationship between the Building Trades Union and Trump ended when he was building Trump Tower Chicago. Mr. McGarvey said that he looked for his project manager for this Trump Tower Chicago on The Apprentice. He said the union was eager to support Trump's promises of an infrastructure bill while he was in the White House. And McGarvey said he had talked to Trump about getting support for multi-employer pension funds in the first COVID relief bill in 2020. And Trump said this to him. He said, quote, "All you people are going to love me, right, Sean? All you people." He said, but none of it ever came to pass. McGarvey said he made the contrast with Biden, that made the contrast with Biden even clearer, along with the union jobs that have been created and the long-term worker protections and apprenticeship programs that have been written into the infrastructure law. He said Donald Trump talked about infrastructure once a week, once a month, once a year. He said he was committed to it. It was going to be easy for him. He would do it. He would do it quickly. The president of the Labor's International Union of North America said in a mocking tone. He said Trump came into office promising $1 trillion infrastructure bill, and he repeatedly said that he would do it over the years, but he never, ever put forward even a plan, let alone an actual bill. So this gigantic union, which represents 3 million, just endorsed Joe Biden, because he was able to pass the infrastructure bill with union protections in it. And also the COVID, the relief package, the recovery package, right? And the Chips and Science Act, which requires unionization, or at least, the people that work there can say whether or not they want a union. I mean, this is it's day and night, and the list is getting longer and longer and longer and longer. LBJ had conservation in his legislative packages. Biden has the Chips and Science Act, and the reason why LBJ did not go for a second term, the reason why he took himself out of the running, the reason why was not just because he understood that he would never, ever be able to get elected because of the Vietnam War and the young people protesting, but also because he was so committed to trying to get a peace plan together that he agreed to stop the bombing and removed himself from the presidency so that he could negotiate in a better, a way. And then Richard Nixon swooped in, said he had a secret plan to end the war, and that was a lie, and he didn't, just like Donald Trump has a secret plan for Ukraine, and he doesn't. His plan is to give Ukraine to Russia. You understand that? And so we don't know what a second LBJ term would have produced for us. Just like we don't know what Al Gore's presidency would produce for us because the Supreme Court chose the president for us. And we need to know. And a second Biden term would be a great way. Don't have time to listen to the live show? Want to hear more on your schedule? Go to randyrhodes.com and buy a stinking podcast.